Quote 1. The horror. The horror. This quote is the realization that man can do anything at any time. A man must confront this horror. Will he ignore it or choose to embrace it? Ultimately, Kurtz chooses to ignore it, letting it consume him. Like all martyrs, they become more in debt. Kurtz wanted this rather than going out believing he was right, and in no way am I saying Kurtz died a martyr, but he couldn't move forward anymore. He had reached the end of the river, the end of his journey. Quote 2. The mind of man is capable of anything. Any man can become a monster of his own making. The symbolic journey is a man's descent into a human hell, where he chooses to become a monster. Kurtz, throughout the entire novel, is able to pretend he still has some type of moral high ground, that he is a civilized one doing the rest of the natives a favor by allowing them his presence. Those who so confidently claim they would never be evil perpetrators of some evil society are usually the first ones to fall, because civility is just lying about your true feelings, hiding for personal gain. No one is a bad person in his or her mind. We are all noble protagonists. If you can't understand that anyone has the capacity of insane evil or the capacity to commit great evil, you are pathetically naive, and you will fall victim to the phenomenon if you grossly underestimate it. Quote 3. But his soul was mad. Being alone in the wilderness, it had looked within itself, and by heavens I tell you, it had gone mad. If we have moral restraints released from us, from society, and we're no longer tied to laws or forced to do what is considered socially acceptable, we become free. This is where unconscious and dark yearnings begin to surface. It's our dark inner voice whispering the truth. It's enough to drive any person mad, good or bad. Later on, we learn it's the wilderness that is the manifestation of this darkness the characters are introduced to in the novel. Quote 4. He struggled with himself too. I saw it. I heard it. I saw the inconceivable mystery of a soul that knew no restraint, no faith, and no fear, yet struggling blindly with itself. Kurtz could not handle the truth, the horror he had encountered in Africa, what he had realized about himself. Kurtz understood intellectually what had to be done to attain ivory, which is why the company held on to him for so long. But at what cost? His soul could not accept it morally, so he went mad. Quote 5. Since I'd peeped over the edge myself, I understood better the meaning of his stare, that could not see the flame of the candle, but was wide enough to penetrate all, the heart, the beats, and the darkness. Marlowe sees somewhat of himself in Kurtz. However, Marlowe has seen the horror, survived, and stayed somewhat sane, unlike Kurtz, who loses his life and reason. As a reader, we also question if Marlowe lost his reason, because he lies to the intended, but the hypocrisy was always prevalent in the novel. But at the end, he's not quite able to shake off what he has seen, what has happened to him. Quote 6. The dusk was repeating them in a persistent whisper all around us, and a whisper that seemed to swell, menacing like the first whisper out of a rising wind. The horror, the horror. Even after all this time, even after a year, Marlowe is still paranoid, and darkness follows him. I think it always will follow him like a stain throughout his life. It still taunts him. He acknowledges it, and he has to live with it for the rest of his life. This book is so much deeper than imperialism. It's about the death of humanity. The entire book is about the conflict in every heart between good and evil. The journey down the river symbolizes the journey into the soul. When you get to the heart of your soul, you find darkness. In the wilderness, and as they encounter the experience of isolation, there's no running from who they are. No one to hold them together anymore. They're all alone. But I do take a little umbrage with the idea of humanity being evil, brutish, and violent at the core. Because if we were, we wouldn't all quite be here to pontificate on that now, would we?